Hello everyone. Today I'm going to begin with the presentation for raising food animals free range and pasture raised. This is for ASCI-67. This includes Group 7, which is Cassandra Godinez, Brittany Madrid, and me, Alejandra Valdez. So we're about to begin. This is history and background, and I like to begin with the beginning. So, livestock was first farmed when Neolithic hunter gatherers settled and domesticated animals, which sheep are thought to be the first domesticated for food production. And right here, I just included a picture, which is said to be during those times. And then also, I'd like to say that the consumption of meat became more popular, especially of pork, which accounted for almost 50% of farm animals bred during the Middle Ages, which was between the 11th and 13th centuries. There was no shortage of meat because there was no efficient means of transport and preservation. So basically, all the animals they had there, it was there for them to use since there was no means of transport or for them to preserve it. And by the 20th century, and the industrial inventions like battery cages for hens were created to increase production. That's usually what we see now. When you see documentaries on animal welfare, that's usually something that's a big controversy. But before mass production, the meat industry animals were raised free range or pasture raised. And right here, I just included some examples of what free range and pasture raised animals look like and how the production is. So right here, I included hogs, cattle, and also some chickens as well. Ethical aspects of free range and pasture raised. Ethically, pasture raising animals for food consumption has seen a rise in popularity as a social change is beginning to look more closely where the food on our plate comes from. So basically, this was just sort of my opinion. Also, because of ASI 67, also realizing that people are starting to look really closely at animal welfare and how the food comes on their plate. And no healthy ecosystem can exist without flora and fauna of all sizes. Pasture-based farms are environmentally beneficial because they mimic nature. They also rely on perennial plants, grasses, which strengthen and nourish soil. Often market locally, reducing fossil fuels needed for transport, less waste to dispose of. Animal waste is welcome into the ecosystem naturally. So basically, feedlots or the typical dairy, they have to remove a bunch of waste, which they have to take it somewhere. But when you pasture raise or have these animals free range, it goes back to the cycle. Their waste goes back into the cycle, and it's uh you know it goes back into the ecosystem basically, and there's not so much waste to dispose of, and it's less invasive to wildlife habitats than cornfields and feedlots. Sorry about that. This is also in contrast to industrial livestock management, which I was kind of explaining. Industrial livestock management relies on the cultivation of corn and soy, high maintenance crops that occupy a combined of 173 million acres of the corn's best farmland. Pasture raised or farm raised. I know there's a little bit of controversy, that there's some differences that you have to look at labels, whether they're grass fed or just free range or pasture raised. But basically, the cultivation of corn and soy is what we feed those animals, whether we feed them grass or corn. And the needs for fossil fuels to transport feed and animals. Basically, also getting the feed, if they're getting fed corn, getting it to there and from the store. And then also it creates air, land, and water pollution through the disposal of animal waste in concentrated amounts, which I was just explaining. So those are just some of the ethical aspects of, pasture raising and free range, farming. So there you go. And my partner will go ahead and take over the other slides. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Cassandra Godinez, and I'm going to be talking about current events that deal with food animals being raised free range or pasture raised. My first current event is in Michigan. A law has recently been passed that all egg laying hens must be kept in cage free systems, and also they have prohibited the sale of non cage free eggs by December 2024. This came from the Detroit Free Press. There's already other states that have done such thing, like California, Washington, Oregon, and Rhode Island. Hundreds of companies in the United States have also taken a pledge to switch to cage-free eggs by 2025. This came from the Washington Post. This shows that not just these states are taking that step, but there's hundreds of companies out in the US and other states that also want to do this. From the New York Times, grass-fed beef has been proven to be better for a person's health than feedlot-raised beef. It also used a medical journal as a source, so you could have more of the idea that grass-fed beef has way less cholesterol and the fats in it are better. And these are some pictures of free-range animals such as chickens, cattle, and goats. Some benefits of free-ranged animals is that there's a less probability that meat is contaminated with medications, antibiotics, anything like that. It's way more humane or ethical treatment of animals. They're treated better, they're not in confined places, such things as that. There is a reduce in waste and pollution being produced, so the water's not being as contaminated because they're not washing it down and throwing it into streams. It's more nutritious for people to eat, like I said before. It has lower cholesterol. Cattle beef has low cholesterol. The fats are way better. And there could be diversity in the herd. So it could be Angus, it could be any other type of cattle, but there's always more diversity than if it was a feedlot where they just want one breed.
Hello, my name is Brittany Madrid, and I'm going to be talking about the cultural and sociological importance of free-range animals. According to the ASPCA, 94% of Americans agree that animals raised for food deserve to live free from abuse and cruelty. Knowing that the animals we consume to survive are not coming from abuse and living healthy lives makes us feel better about choosing to eat meat if they are allowed to be free-range. Farms that are not properly maintained and cramped in cages can cause more cases of disease that affect the population, such as E. coli and Salmonella, which is easily spread throughout the population. Factory farms can also cause air and water pollution that are causing a decline in value of homes in rural areas, forcing families to uproot their lives and move to better areas. Large industrial agriculture has nearly wiped out small family-owned farms. Cage-free animals provide more security that the food we eat will be safe and our families will be protected, as well as keeping smaller family-operated farms and ranches open because they agree with the ethical treatment of animals, which also keeps the surrounding areas clean and livable. So all in all, there are many reasons to agree that animals should be free-range. Just to name a few honorable mentions from above: no healthy ecosystem can exist without flora and fauna of all sizes. Pasture-based farms are environmentally beneficial because they mimic nature. They also often market locally, reducing fossil fuels needed for transport. There is less probability that the meat is contaminated, which makes it more nutritious for people to eat. It reduces air and water pollution that are causing a decline in the value of homes. And last but not least, it is more humane and ethical in the treatment of animals, which makes everyone feel better. And then these are the sources that we used for our information.